deal. Demonstrators agreed to dismantle their encampment at Brown, which had been removed by Tuesday evening, and university leaders said they would discuss and later vote on divesting funds from companies connected to the Israeli military campaign in Gaza. The agreement came even as scenes of chaos continued to overtake U.S. universities, with protesters at Columbia, New York, and Portland State in Oregon occupying buildings, and demonstrators at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill replacing an American flag at the center of campus with a Palestinian one. And Mayor Eric Adams of New York today defended the overnight arrest of nearly 300 campus protesters in New York City, praising the police for using restraint and arguing that protesters were anti-Semitic and led by outsiders who were part of a global effort to radicalize young people. Mr. Adams said at a news conference at the police headquarters in New York that he had advised Columbia University's leaders that the police had seen a shift in tactics at the protests led by outside agitators, and that you have more than a peaceful protest on your hands. As Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida prepared to run for president last spring, he gathered anti-abortion activists in his Capitol office for an unusual bill signing held late at night and behind closed doors. Florida lawmakers had just approved a ban on abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy, a major policy shift that would sharply restrict access to the procedure for women in neighboring states as well as Floridians. That law took effect today. Well, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia said today that she would demand a vote next week on a motion to remove Speaker Mike Johnson, moving forward in the face of all but certain defeat, with a second attempt during this Congress to depose a Republican speaker. In a morning news conference at the Capitol today, Greene excoriated Johnson for working with Democrats to push through major legislation and said it was time for lawmakers to go on the record about where they stood on his speakership. Arizona lawmakers voted today to repeal an abortion ban that first became law when Abraham Lincoln was president, and a half century before women even won the right to vote. A bill to repeal the law passed 16-14 in the Republican-controlled state Senate with the support of every Democratic senator and 2 Republicans who broke with anti-abortion conservatives in their own party. It now goes that it being that bill to Governor Katie Hobbs, a Democrat who is expected to sign it. And once the mayor of New York City and later the personal lawyer to former President Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, he filed for bankruptcy in December after a federal judge ordered him to pay $148 million to the 2 Georgia election workers for falsely accusing them of rigging the outcome in President Biden's favor. Well, Giuliani has listed $11 million in assets, including his Upper East Side apartment, which he put on the market last year for $6.5 million. Then he took it off the market. Some of Giuliani's creditors are claiming that he's not being forthright and truthful with the court in listing his assets, and some believe his $43,000 a month expense payments that he says he's responsible for are including things like Uber rides and fancy dinners and payments of credit card bills, all money which they say should be dedicated to his creditors. And Secretary of State Antony Blinken said today that Hamas leaders could save Palestinian lives by accepting a proposed deal under which they would free 33 hostages in exchange for a 6-week ceasefire and the liberation of many Palestinian prisoners. Mr. Blinken said at the start of the meeting in Tel Aviv that there is a proposal on the table, and we've said no delays, no excuses. The time is now, and the time is now long past due to bring the hostages home to their families. This is the news, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I'm joined by my good friend, Dr. Carlos Hill. He is a professor at the University of Oklahoma. He is going to join me in hour 1 to help me break down today's trending news and really explore what's happening on college campuses. We're going to stay with that topic because as you turn on the news today, as you pick up your newspaper, as you go on social media, we continue to see these really ugly battles between law enforcement officers in some cases and student protesters and even counter protesters, causing many folks to ask what are the limits of the First Amendment and how are universities handling these disputes? And why is it that folks at Brown University and even Northwestern were able to get it done fairly quickly without incident and without the police? And then in hour two, we're going to bring you a story about aging. This is the hour, in hour two, when we go behind those headlines and we bring you the stories that people are talking about. And we're going to be talking about new technology and new medicine that can help folks live a whole lot longer than what any of us expected. You may have thought that 70 was the new 50, or maybe even 60 was the new 40. But my experts that join me in hour two are going to tell you that 90, yes, 90. They're going to tell you that 90 is the new 50, if you can believe it. We know folks are living longer, and with living longer also means, more money needed to pay for living expenses and questions about Social Security and medical insurance and all of those things that we need in order to live longer. So make sure you stick around for hour two. Before we bring on Dr. Hill and start breaking down today's trending news, here's what I'm thinking about in real time. The news has been so dominated with Donald Trump's criminal trial in Manhattan and now the student protest. But there's another story that caught my attention in the news today, and that's the NAACP. They're calling for the federal investigation into the death of a handcuffed Ohio man who told police, "I can't breathe." We've heard that refrain before. We've heard other unarmed African-American men who are in disputes with the police use that refrain, "I can't breathe." The NAACP says without federal intervention, the police officers involved in this case may not ever be held accountable. This is involving a 53-year-old Black man who died, again, after repeatedly telling officers that he couldn't breathe. This man's name is Frank Tyson. A lot of people are drawing comparisons to Mr. Tyson's death to that of George Floyd, who we witnessed, be killed by the police in Minneapolis after being taken into custody in May of 2020. The NAACP shared a letter that they sent to Kristen Clark, the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, imploring the Department of Justice to do an investigation, saying that 36 minutes show up on a body cam video of this encounter that happened on April 18th. Apparently, this video is just being released. Law enforcement officers were apprehending Mr. Tyson at some kind of lodge where he was. Officers had responded to a single car crash nearby, and when they entered this bar, officers were asked to remove Mr. Tyson, who they say refused to leave. Mr. Tyson repeatedly said, "They are trying to kill me," and he said, "Call the sheriff." That's what he told the police officers. People are saying that the reports are that two primary officers who responded to the call both had just joined this law enforcement agency in 2022. They have now been placed on paid leave. These two officers wrestled Mr. Tyson to the ground and handcuffed him. One of them is seen placing a knee. We've seen that before, right? A knee on Mr. Tyson's upper body for about 30 seconds. You can hear in this video Mr. Tyson saying, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe. You're on my neck." Now, apparently the officer removes his knee, but again, Mr. Tyson cries out saying he can't breathe. But we can hear the officer saying to Mr. Tyson, "You're fine. Shut the F up." We've heard that language before on body camera when police are apprehending individuals, how belligerent the police come and how much profanity they are often using that's caught on videos. This video then shows Mr. Tyson lying motionless on the floor face down for about 6 minutes while at least one of the officers is talking to other individuals in this bar. At one point, one of the officers tells this joke. He says, "I've always wanted to be in a bar fight. I don't know if this counts. I don't know how sick you think that joke is, but to me, that's a very sick joke for a police officer to make while someone is lying face down saying they can't breathe. At some point, they do go back and check on Mr. Tyson. He appears, though, at that point to be unresponsible. They take his pulse. They later perform some kind of chest compressions, but Mr. Tyson is unresponsible. They apparently tried CPR. They gave him doses of Narcan before medics arrived, and Mr. Tyson was taken to a hospital where he was pronounced dead. This is, again, another tragic case. African-American man, brief encounter with police on the ground, knee to his neck, and several minutes later, he's dead. The NAACP is saying that the officer showed a callous disregard for Mr. Tyson's repeated pleas for police officers to release their knee and their bodies from his neck. Mr. Johnson, that's Derek Johnson, the NAACP national president, said in a statement today that nearly 4 years after the tragic death of George Floyd, we are forced to bear witness to yet another unarmed Black man cry out for air at the hands of law enforcement. There is an attorney, his name is Bobby DiCello, who's representing the Tyson's family. He has, again, evoked the murder of George Floyd and made comparisons to what happened to Mr. Tyson to what happened to Mr. Floyd. After George Floyd's murder and this so-called racial reckoning that we went through and the backlash that we're experiencing now, many of these stories of police killing unarmed Black men don't really get a lot of national media attention. We don't, see the big Black Lives Matter protests. We don't see the news media standing in front of families and, lawyers and clergy. So we have to rely on each other to make sure that we are continuing to elevate these stories, that these stories don't just get lost in the morass of, quick news stories that are told every day in this country. And Mr. Tyson's life, his experiences with the police, his death in this bar after this brief encounter with police needs to be talked about, needs to be elevated, and needs to be a story that is given priority in the same way that other stories involving George Floyd and, unfortunately, so many Black men who have died at the hands of police. My heart goes out to Mr. Tyson's family. This is, again, another example why Kristen Clark, the Department of Justice, the Biden administration, so critical at this moment, because we know under Donald Trump, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division was essentially shut down, and there were no investigations of rogue police officers and rogue cops like the cops involved in this case. So I'm so grateful for Kristen Clark and the Department of Justice, not to say that it's preventing these killings of unarmed Black men, but we can at least count on this department to investigate, be transparent, and cause these police departments to take action when these kinds of unfortunate murders of Black men occur. Again, heart and prayers go out to Mr. Tyson's family, yet another unarmed Black man killed at the arms of police officers. When we come forward, Dr. Carlos Hill is here to help me break down today's trending and breaking news. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Free. Who doesn't love free? With Milo's Rewards, you get the member-only treatment that's actually worth it. Enjoy free member gifts you'll love. And once you reach Silver Key status, you can get free standard shipping. Because Lowe's knows nothing feels better than free. Learn more about our new loyalty program at Lowe's.com/Milo's Rewards today. Program subject to terms and conditions. See Lowe's.com/terms for details. Member gifts may be subject to additional terms and restrictions. See Lowe's.com/shipping terms for details. Subject to change.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Diego.
Hi, Diego. It's Jennifer Coolidge. I just want to say your cashback match makes me feel so special. It really inspired me.
That's great. Doubling the cashback you've earned at the end of your first year is what we do.
Well, I'm doubling everything now. Double dating, double dipping, double feature, double header, double whammy. Basically double or nothing.
You earn, we match. Discover Cashback Match. See terms at discover.com/credit card.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Environmental justice is racial justice.
Environmental justice is social justice.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Stay Housed LA has the resources you need to know your rights and the legal support to back them up. The COVID-19 pandemic has cost people their jobs and livelihoods. This has left an estimated 1/3 of households not being able to make rent and facing losing their homes. This is a fear no one in our community should have to face. You have rights, though, and Stay Housed LA is here to help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, and local community and legal service providers. Together, they provide tenants with the information and support needed to exercise their rights so they can remain safely in their homes. Find out more about your rights by participating in a virtual tenant workshop. Get the legal assistance you need. Find additional resources in Los Angeles County and the City of Los Angeles. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA County for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. That's stayhousedla.org. Or call their hotline at 213-694-0040. We've got your black with a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and in this hour, Professor Carlos Hill is joining me as we tackle today's busy news day. Thank you so much, Professor Hill. Always a pleasure to be in conversation with you. Can't let this moment go by without talking about these student protests and the example that was set by Brown University. Yesterday, Columbia University, UCLA, seemed to be at an impasse. We saw police moving in, Columbia literally clearing a building. We saw the president vowing to not just suspend, but to expel students, asking the NYPD to come to the campus and to remain until May 17th. I know a lot of the Black students on that campus now feel like they are living in a police state, and some of their Jewish and Palestinian brothers and sisters may not understand what that means, but for Black men in particular, that's pretty scary, particularly given the story I just read about Mr. Tyson and his brief encounter with police. But let's talk about Brown. Why was Brown University able to wrap their arms around this issue and come to an agreement, strike a deal with their student protesters in a way that other universities have not been able to do?
Hi, Areva. It is great to be on your show. It is always great to be on your show because we speak truth here. I don't know, Areva, why Brown versus Columbia versus, we've seen protests at Harvard and some of the other Ivies. I don't know why. But I would say that just maybe there's some courage at UPenn. There's some courage in some of these. And so we just got to say thank you. But Areva, I just want to say what's on my mind right now as it relates to Palestine and all the protests that are happening across America. I am happy they're happening. They need to happen. Anytime 30,000 people, for no fault of their own, have been killed because of a war to end we talk about the Israeli occupation, but we don't talk about the Hamas occupation of Palestine and how they have removed democracy from Palestine. And so, and what's on my heart, Areva, and what I want to talk about today, if it's possible to talk about, is the thing that we most need in Palestine, in the Middle East, is power to the people, power to the Palestinian people. Because since 2006, 7, and 8, there's not been a process or elections to allow them to vote and to express their self-determination. And so what we most need in this conflict, we need the return of hostages, we need a ceasefire, but we also need power to the people, power to the Palestinian people who for more than a decade have been absent political power. And I think their voices are most needed right now in terms of where does the region go, where does Palestine go, where does the West Bank go, where does Gaza go in this moment. We need their voices. And right now we just hear from the US, we hear from Israel, we hear from Hamas, and they don't represent the people.
No, really good point. And, I just want to make sure that we are giving credit where credit is due. I mentioned Brown University, but it was Northwestern University that became the first U.S. school to publicly announce a deal on Monday. And that was followed by Brown University's announcement on Tuesday with student organizers, the deal reached with student organizers. Now, this was the peaceful conclusion of the protests and the victorious stance of students come as encampments have become a flashpoint in this nationwide movement. It doesn't really give us a lot of details about these deals, but what we do know is that these students should feel very good about, as you said, taking a stance and causing their universities to make concessions. I'm reading some of what Northwestern published. They said the disclosure of the school investments to students who request information, funding to support 2 visiting Palestinian faculty members for 2 years, full ride scholarships for 5 Palestinian undergraduate students, and a commitment to fundraise for similar opportunities. Immediate establishment of a temporary community house for Muslims and Middle Eastern and North African students, and a promise to establish a permanent space. So the students at Northwestern, Dr. Hill, they weren't just focused on what's happening in Palestine. They are saying our campus is not diverse enough. We don't have enough opportunities. We don't have enough Muslim students. We don't have safe spaces for these students. So they're really negotiating. Kind of reminds me of some of the protests we saw in the 60s and 70s when we were trying to get Black studies departments, right? Trying to get more Black faculty and more Black students on campus. Talk to us about the similarities, particularly in this Northwestern deal between what these students are trying to get for Muslim students and how that relates to what we've seen in terms of efforts to get departments for Black students and Black studies.
Okay. Thank you, Areva. I would say, Areva, just to put it all in perspective as a historian, student movements have not only changed college campuses, they've changed America. The student movement changed America. The sit-in movement, which was a student movement, changed America. And I would say the campus movement of the 1960s, the late 1960s, beginning with Black Power and extending to the 1970s, that created my department, Black Studies Department at Oklahoma, and all the Black Studies Department across this country were student movements. And so student movements are a part of the vibrancy of what people like to talk about America, what makes America great. It's we're going to talk about it tonight, Areva. It's students, the young people, the people who have the cutting edge ideas, even the radical ideas that push people. It's that is. And so when I think about this issue in Palestine, it's college campuses are not the problem. They are the solution. They're calling us out and telling us that we need to be more democratic. They're telling us that the issues that matter we're not addressing. They're telling us that if we really want to solve this for a generation or two, because we don't solve it forever, we just solve it for our time or for a generation or two, it's going to be up to another generation to solve the problems of that generation. But we have it right here. What are we doing? They're telling us, these college campuses, Harvard, Yale, you got some investments in and you need to divest. Come on. Yes. And then also our politics, how we talk about this, it needs to change. And so that is rubbing up against, and that's pushing against precedent, tradition, and donors. And I say that very slowly because it's donors, Areva. And so, and UPenn, Harvard, Yale, all of them are the biggest beneficiaries of donorship. Got 50 billion endowment, 40 billion. We can talk about it, but they get money from, and so they're not trying to end that. And so they're realize, where are our ethics and our support of students and our bottom line? That's a hard situation to figure out.
Well, hold that thought for me, Professor Hill. When we come forward, I'm going to read to you the terms that have been agreed to by the students and the administration at Brown University, Northwestern and Brown, showing that there are some universities out there, some profiles in courage with college administrations. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
The right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Tyreek Wynn. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. A shooting outside the home of a music executive left a security guard wounded. The guard was sitting inside a security shack at the home in Encino, California. He was rushed to the hospital in an unknown condition, and the shooters were gone when police arrived. A star player on the Philadelphia 76ers is upset about vocal Knicks fans on their home court. Joel Embiid said it was disappointing to hear all of those fans from New York during the Game 4 loss at Wells Fargo Center. Beyonce is returning to the Lion King franchise, and her daughter Blue Ivy is joining her. According to Variety, the 12-year-old will play Simba and Nala's daughter Kiara in Mufasa the Lion King. Beyonce will play Nala once again. The movie explores the origin of Mufasa and explores his childhood with his brother Scar. Mufasa the Lion King hits theaters on December 20th. That's the latest. I'm Tyreek Wynn on your home 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Keeping you updated with the latest from Hollywood, protesters have officially shut down the Hollywood Boulevard in both directions between Orange and Vine due to the May Day March. Right now, we are asking folks to please try to avoid this area to add on to the already heavy delays. Also, fire crews remain on scene in Beverly Hills as Beverly Drive is closed at Coldwater Canyon due to a major fire. And right now, we don't have any further details. But what we can tell you is Coldwater Canyon and Sunset is the highly affected area. Back in Santa Monica, heavy traffic continues over an hour and 10 minutes on the 10 East between 20th Street and Highway 60. And in downtown LA, accident is blocking the carpool lane of the 10 West at San Pedro Street, and heavy traffic continues from the 5-101 interchange.
Unleash your style in 2024 at FS Cut and Color. Get a fabulous cut and color duo from one of their expert stylists at unbeatable prices. Only at Fantastic Sam's, where hair care meets affordability. Visit FantasticSams.com to find one of their 60 SoCal salons near you.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Something to keep your eye on tonight in Game 5 between the Clippers and Dallas Mavericks. James Harden has been balling with Kawhi Leonard on the bench with a sore right knee. In the 2 games Leonard has missed in the series, Harden is averaging 30 points, 7.5 assists, and shooting 62% on three-pointers. Leonard is not playing tonight. The Clippers will need Harden to continue showing his takeover attitude. The Clippers and Mavericks are tied at 2 games apiece. If you don't have tickets, you can catch the game live on TNT, 7 p.m. tip-off. Tiger Woods said he's going to try to play in 1 tournament per month the rest of the year to try to regain his championship form. The 48-year-old Tiger is battling numerous injuries and ailments. He's hoping to play in all 4 major PGA events in the same year for the first time since 2019. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on. Pick up the drum.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey!
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
Life can throw unexpected challenges our way. Black families need support. Children require safe, loving, temporary homes. Research shows that children in foster care thrive when they remain in their own communities. The strength and love within the Black community can provide a sense of belonging. We need your help to consider opening your hearts and homes. Contact fosterlakids.org today or call 888-811-1121. Again, 888-811-1121. Become a foster parent today.
It's the farewell tour. Maze featuring Frankie Beverly and KBLA wants to send you and the special mom in your life. Sunday, May 12th at the Kia Forum.
Make sure I'm right, girl. Before I let go.
Also featuring soul icon Anthony Hamilton.
You were best to me. Amazing. Amazing. Amazing.
And After 7.
I'll give you everything.
It's a Mother's Day celebration you won't forget. Listen in for your chance to win tickets. And don't forget to wear white. It's the farewell tour with Maze featuring Frankie Beverly.
My mom has taken up going to the park to practice yoga.
My dad's going to a club, but not a book club, a salsa club.
Finding new hobbies comes with age.
My mom has started getting lost and not knowing where she's going.
Becoming lost or disoriented doesn't. Confusion with time or place may be a sign of Alzheimer's. An early diagnosis can help improve the quality of life for your loved one. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the
We are back, and joining me in this hour is Professor Carlos Hill as we break down today's trending and breaking news. And in hour two, we're going to be talking about the aging process and some new tech breakthroughs, I should call them, in medicine and science that might have you living to be past 100, and some experts that say 90 is the new 50. Yes, 90 is the new 50. So make sure you stick around for hour two. Professor Hill, I wanted to read the deal that was struck by students at Brown University with their between the student protesters and the administration. So according to a copy of the agreement published by the university, the deal includes to allow for a select group of students to meet with university officials to discuss its investments and possible divestment from the Israeli-held holdings. The concluding recommendations around divestment coming from the meeting will then be voted on by university officials. Anyone affiliated with the university can request it divest the Brown endowment from assets of specific companies and guarantees students and others affiliated with the university who participated in the protest will not be subjected to expulsion or suspension. And it's important to note that the students at Brown were really focused on divestment and getting the school to divest from an array of weapons manufacturers amid the Israel-Hamas war. What I am so impressed with by this statement is that the university is agreeing not to suspend and expel. Columbia University, on the other hand, has been like on just this rant, this rage to quell protests by using police and then threatening, and not just threatening, but carrying out suspensions and expulsions. And as a college professor, if you are expelled from a college, getting accepted into another college is going to be close to impossible. And not to mention all the money that you probably have invested in that one school. So kudos to Brown for saying we respect our student protesters enough that we are not going to suspend or expel them. How can Brown become the model for schools like UCLA, like Columbia, like some of the schools in the South that we see using this more heavy-handed approach with law enforcement, and even some schools calling in the National Guard?
Areva, I think these universities, who I haven't studied closely, but I would say that they've been alarmed by reports of outside protesters coming on campus. And that stimulates a lot of the police presence and so forth for safety for students and so. But I would say at the same time, I've been saddened by not the actions, but the rhetoric at the Ivy League level, which in so many ways becomes the rhetoric for American universities. If we do this at Harvard, Columbia, we do this everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so these students are not trying to change the world. They're just trying to get us to be conscious about the 30,000 people who have been murdered, been killed by bombs, by famine, by just the war itself. I want to repeat, we were in Afghanistan for more than 20 years and we didn't see 30,000 people dead. We've seen a war since October 7th that has led to, in a population of roughly, let's just say 2.5 million people, we've seen 30,000 of those people, more than that, die. And we hadn't seen that in a U.S. war effort bombing over Afghanistan over 20 years, the same amount of death in less than 8 months. That should be alarming to people. That's alarming to students. And these are students who, some of them don't have the possibility to vote. So think about that. People who can't vote on these college campuses saying we should be stopping and thinking about this, that this has happened. And regardless of what's happening in your life and my life, this should be a cause of concern, because whether we like it or not, our government, which we pay money to in taxes, is funding this. Whether we like it or not, if our silence is supporting this. So we have an opportunity to do something, to say something. That's the opportunity that these college protests have offered us. I don't know if we're willing to take it and say, you know something that we don't know, you know something that we're not activated around. Let's get activated. But I love it in the sense that they are the front lines of our consciousness in terms of this issue. And they're pushing the Biden administration. They're pushing me. They're pushing college campuses. They're pushing everyday citizens who just want this to end and they don't want to hear about it. They're pushing us to think about it. And if we have to think about it as oh my God, if Americans think about something that they don't want to think about besides Marjorie Taylor Greene and Donald Trump, oh my God, if we have to think about this, I'm for it.
Yeah, what's interesting to me, Carlos, is you think about the Vietnam War protests, right? And so many of those protesters went on to be heroes. Think about the civil rights protesters in the 60s. This country has a way of vilifying you in the moment and then coming back and basically making you a patron saint. So we know that when history will be written about these college protests and the college protesters, there will emerge a lot of heroes, a lot of people who will be applauded for taking principled stands. A lot of people who will be applauded for, starting the encampments and causing the encampments to grow. These Columbia students who, in many ways, began the protests and reached out to other colleges throughout the country. So, I stand with you in solidarity with these students. But I have said to students that I've been talking to, don't get caught up in the mob mentality, because when you're out protesting, it's very easy, for someone to throw a bottle, throw a rock, crash a window. And I was like, you want to maintain the moral high ground. Don't let these protests turn into the, insurrectionists that we saw on January 6th, where you're scaling buildings and breaking windows and, attacking people, because then you lose that moral high ground. You lose the support of folks who otherwise would stand with you. And these are young kids, so we know emotions run high and they sometimes get caught up in the moment. But I'm proud for the most part that we haven't seen that, because it becomes more difficult, to defend any kind of vandalism or, fire setting or anything of that nature. We understand, again, the emotional toll that this has taken on students. But for the most part, these students have just been absolutely phenomenal in risking their literally, some of them on Columbia, their college careers. Like I said, the president of Columbia, is saying, we will suspend you and we will expel you. And maybe this Brown example, this Northwestern example, will cause the Columbia president, the UCLA president, and others to back up and to revisit and to reevaluate how they've handled the protests on their campus. And we know early May, Virginia Fox, the head of the education committee for the GOP, she summoned the University of Michigan, UCLA, and the Yale president, because this is all part of a plan by the GOP to cause disruption on college campuses, to create tension between the presidents and the students. So I hope that the presidents that are going to testify in the next couple of weeks are smarter, and that they don't allow themselves to be manipulated by the GOP so that they go and do some extreme things. Like, I think the Columbia president felt so much pressure trying to kowtow to and mollify these GOP legislators, who then called for her ouster anyhow. Mike Johnson went to Columbia, stood on the steps and said this president should resign. So there is no satisfying these GOP legislators. They have one agenda, and that is to ensure that they are in power, to ensure that Donald Trump is reelected, and they're willing to disrupt any and every institution in this country to make sure that happens. When we come forward, Professor Hill, we're going to talk about your friend, Marjorie Taylor Greene, since you brought her up, and what she's been up to, and what's happening in Arizona. Again, split screen over abortion. Florida, most restrictive abortion law in the country, one of them taking effect today. And Arizona lawmakers saying maybe an 1864 law banning abortion is not the best law for our citizens in this moment. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number and put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
call your senior Medicare patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, home of the 2024 Climate Justice Campaign. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Tia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Tia Chuchas opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Tia Chuchas Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.tiachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
All right, Dr. Hill, you brought up your good friend, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I wasn't necessarily going to talk about her today, but since you brought her up, let's go there. So she said she would demand a vote next week to remove Speaker Mike Johnson. And the reason she gave, I mean, there are lots of reasons that maybe you'd want to remove him, but she said she wants to remove him because he has worked with Democrats to push through major legislation. And she said it was time for lawmakers to go on the record about where they stand on his speakership. So I'm sitting here thinking, it used to be a time when working across the aisle with your colleagues from the opposite party was lauded. That made you a good statesman. That says you were a person that could seek the support from your folks that you don't necessarily agree with ideologically, and you could get things done in Congress. She says Mike Johnson should go because he did the very thing that used to make you, again, a hero. But she says, oh no, Republicans don't work with Democrats, even if it means you cannot get any legislation passed. But she did this press conference. I was watching it. I happened to be watching a station that was covering it live. She seemed to be out there on a limb by herself. There weren't she had 1 or 2 folks standing with her, but I don't think there's a whole lot of support for Marjorie Taylor Greene, even within the far right GOP party.
Areva, did you say there's not a lot of support out there on the limb?
I said Marjorie Taylor Greene appears to be out on a limb by herself because she was not surrounded. There weren't the flanks. Her posse, her crew was light. She had like 2 people standing with her at that press conference.
Well, I think Areva, there is a ceiling for Trump politics, which Marjorie Taylor Greene represents. There is a ceiling, particularly for those people who are not Donald Trump. She doesn't have his skill. She doesn't have his team, and she's not him. That's the thing. You're not him. So it's always going to be that dissonance. But what I want to highlight what you said is so much of what has allowed Donald Trump to become who he is, and even a Marjorie Taylor Greene, is this moral high ground. securing for the Republican Party even a kind of moral high ground as it relates to reproductive rights, as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, as it refers to the election even. And so we can start to see how when these Republican politicians like a Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a Donald Trump acolyte, who is Donald Trump in the Congress in every way, when they begin to get so far afield and just not even talking to their party, we can see what happens. But at the same time, we know that when those issues become boilerplate issues, when they become issues that the Republican Party gets around, that Marjorie Taylor Greene can get them to get around, they do. And so I don't know what to make of this, because this is an election year, and in an election year like we have, I would call it an existential election where people are voting not just for this election, but for many more to come. This is not just about 2024. It's about 2034, 2020, 2038. Like, it's an election of elections. And so,
no doubt about it. You know, one of the things, Professor Hill, that's so troubling to me, I don't know if you saw this Time magazine, they did an in-depth interview with Donald Trump, and he talked about his policies, and some of the things he said are so outrageous. You just wonder how someone who makes these kind of statements can be in the lead in some national polls and be the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party. He says in a second term agenda that he would reshape America and its role in the world. He says that he would carry out a deportation operation. So I hope all the Muslims and Arabs and immigrants in this country who are upset with Joe Biden have read this. He says, designed to remove more than 11 million people from this country. He told the Time that he would be willing to build migrant detention camps and deploy the U.S. military both at the border and inland. He would let red states monitor women's pregnancies and prosecute those who violate abortion bans. With his own personal discretion, he would withhold funds appropriated by Congress. He would be willing to fire a U.S. attorney who doesn't carry out his order to prosecute someone, breaking with the tradition of independent law enforcement that dates from the founding of this country. He is weighing pardons for every one of his supporters accused of attacking the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. That's more than 800 people who have been either pled guilty or found guilty by juries. He says he may not come to the aid of any attacked ally in Europe or Asia if he felt that country wasn't paying enough for their own defense. He would gut the U.S. Civil Service. He would deploy the National Guard, check this out, to American cities as he sees fit. He would close the White House Pandemic Preparation Office, staff his administration with acolytes who back his false assertion that the 2020 election was stolen. And he just goes on and on. He says, when I first got to Washington, I didn't know very many people and I didn't know what I was doing. He says, I'm ready now. So he makes those statements and it's kind of casual. It's kind of normalized. And it hasn't, I don't know, it's in Time magazine. If you don't read Time, you probably didn't even hear about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, again, I hate to be the person who says things over and over, but
the reiterator.
But he did say, I'm pushing against the guardrails. And unless you're noticing, unless you're upset about it or alarmed by it, I'm pushing against them. And so all the things that you mentioned that he is doing is reminding us that that's what he's doing. He's changing, in hip hop, we say he's changing the game. He's changing the conversation about what is acceptable, permissible for a leader to do of any party, let alone Republican Party.
But Carlos, here's what drives me crazy is people act like it's normal to say you're going to have monitors monitoring the pregnancies of women And if we find out, woman, you were pregnant and 9 months later there's no baby, we're going after you and prosecuting whoever helped you with that abortion. And shouldn't every woman of every age be like, hell no, you just lost my vote for that reason alone?
I think you're right. But as you have mentioned all the time, it's not just about the reality of the situation, it's about what people realize about the reality of the situation. And that's on that's on Democrats to talk about the realities of what will happen, what is happening, what will happen in a Donald Trump presidency. And so it's up to us. But you're right, the realities are so stark, they're unprecedented. Why aren't more Americans in the street? We need a conversation about that, Areva.
I think we need the protest, all the energy these students have around Palestine and Gaza. God bless them. But we got some pressing issues right here that if people want to go out and protest, it should be protested against Donald Trump. He says, and here's the last thing I have to say on this: Black people supporting Donald Trump says he's going to pardon 800 insurrectionists. When we got brothers and sisters in our own family sitting in jail because of, BS charges, he's going to pardon those people. He's going to dismantle civil servants' jobs. How many Black people make a living in this country as civil servants? Oh my God, we are out of time, Carlos. I've gotten myself worked up. I'm so excited about this. I can't believe that, the level of energy around this is so low. Maybe, again, people aren't paying attention. They don't believe him, but we need to wake up. He is telling us how he is going to not just destroy this country, but destroy our personal and individual lives in our communities across this country. And when people show you who they are, you damn better believe them. Thank you so much, Dr. Hill, for being with me. The next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers and the Raw Report right here on KBLA Talk 1580. That is after hour 2 and the whole show about aging. Stay with us.